In Belgium, there is a vegetable that sells for €1,000 per kilogram. It grows wild along every river valley in North America. Breweries throw away 200 tons of it every spring. This is Humulus lupulus, the hop plant, but not the flower, the shoot. For exactly 47 days each year, from late February to early April, this plant produces tender green spears that push through the soil like asparagus. They taste like a cross between artichoke heart and green pea, with a finish that numbs your tongue slightly. That numbness is lupulone, the same compound that preserves beer. The ancient world knew this plant as a medicine first, as food second, as beer flavoring last. We have reversed that order completely. In 77 AD, Pliny the Elder documented hop shoots in his Naturalis Historia. He called them lupus salictarius, the willow wolf, because the vines strangled willow trees as they climbed. Roman farmers harvested the young shoots in March and April. They blanched them like we blanch asparagus today. Pliny wrote that eating hop shoots purges the body of black bile and calms the mind during times of excess thought. Black bile was the Roman term for what we now call cortisol dysregulation and chronic stress. Pliny was not guessing. He was observing. In 1079, Abbess Hildegard von Bingen, the Benedictine polymath who mapped more medicinal plants than any European before her, wrote extensively about hop shoots in her Physica. She cultivated them in the monastery gardens at Disibodenberg in the Rhineland. She prescribed them specifically for melancholia that rises from the liver. She instructed patients to eat the shoots raw in early spring, when the humours are thick and the spirit is burdened. This was not mysticism. Hildegard was documenting hepatoprotective effects 900 years before we had the biochemistry to explain them. Medieval monastery records from Bavaria, Bohemia, and Belgium show that hop shoots, called jettes de houblon in French, lupuli in Italian, hopscheuten in Flemish, were a cultivated crop. They appeared in Lenten menus across Catholic Europe because they emerged exactly during the 40 days of fasting when meat was forbidden. Monks grew hops not primarily for beer, but for the shoots. The flowers were a secondary product. By 1516, when the Reinheitsgebot, the German beer purity law, codified hops as the only legal bittering agent for beer, something critical shifted. The plant's identity changed. It became industrial. It became the flower. The shoot vanished. Why? Because shoots are a nightmare to commercialize. Hop shoots are available for 47 days, not 48, not 50, exactly 47 days from the moment soil temperature reaches 10 degrees Celsius in spring until the vine begins producing lateral branches. After that, the shoots become woody and bitter. The harvest window is shorter than white asparagus, shorter than ramps, shorter than fiddlehead ferns. You cannot mechanize the harvest. Each shoot must be cut by hand, 3 centimeters below the soil surface, at dawn, before sunlight triggers the plant to toughen its cellulose. Industrial agriculture cannot tolerate this. So by 1850, as Europe industrialized and beer production centralized in factory breweries, hop shoots disappeared from markets. The focus narrowed entirely to the flower cones, the part you could dry, bale, ship, and store. The shoots became waste. Hop farmers who once sold shoots in March began ploughing them under as green manure. In 1920, Belgian farmers in the Poperinge region, the hop-growing capital of Flanders, noticed something. Wealthy families in Brussels were paying extraordinary prices for the few hop shoots still being harvested by small farmers. By 1935, jettes de houblon had become the most expensive vegetable in Belgium, not because they were rare, because knowledge of them was rare. By 1970, only 7 farms in Poperinge still harvested hop shoots commercially. Everyone else had forgotten you could eat them. This is not ancient history. This happened in living memory. In 1999, Dr. John F. Stevens at Oregon State University's Linus Pauling Institute began analyzing the chemistry of hop shoots. He was not looking for food. He was looking for cancer inhibitors. What he found changed everything. Hop shoots contain xanthohumol, a prenylated chalcone that exists almost nowhere else in the plant kingdom. Xanthohumol concentrations in hop shoots measure between 0.2% and 0.8% by dry weight. That makes hop shoots one of the most concentrated sources of xanthohumol in any food. Xanthohumol does something remarkable. It inhibits the NF-kappa B pathway, the master switch that controls inflammatory response in human cells. When NF-kappa B is chronically activated, you get the entire cascade of modern metabolic disease: insulin resistance, atherosclerosis, neuroinflammation, and accelerated cellular aging. In 2010, researchers at the German Cancer Research Center in Heidelberg demonstrated that xanthohumol induces apoptosis, programmed cell death, in breast cancer cells at concentrations of 10 micromolar. Normal cells were unaffected. The compound was selectively cytotoxic to cancer. The breweries had been throwing this away for 150 years. But there is more. Hop shoots contain 8-prenylnaringenin, the most potent phytoestrogen ever isolated from a plant. It binds to estrogen receptors with an affinity 50 times stronger than the isoflavones in soy. This is why hop pickers in medieval Europe noticed that young women who handled hops experienced earlier menarche, and why modern hop farmers sometimes develop gynecomastia, breast tissue growth, from chronic exposure to hop dust. Before you panic, understand what this means. Phytoestrogens are not estrogen. They are estrogen modulators. In tissues where you have too much estrogen activity, like proliferative breast tissue, 8-prenylnaringenin acts as an antagonist. It blocks the receptor. In tissues where you have too little estrogen activity, like bone tissue in postmenopausal women, it acts as an agonist. It activates the receptor weakly. This is exactly what selective estrogen receptor modulators, SERMs, do. Pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying to synthesize molecules that behave like 8-prenylnaringenin. It grows wild along the Mississippi River. In 2013, researchers at the University of Illinois discovered something else. Hop shoots contain camphorol glycosides at concentrations of 120 milligrams per 100 grams fresh weight. Camphorol reduces oxidative stress in vascular endothelium, the inner lining of blood vessels. A 2019 meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that dietary camphorol intake correlates with a 20% reduction in cardiovascular mortality. Hop shoots also contain quercetin at 65 milligrams per 100 grams, higher than red onions, higher than kale. Quercetin is a mast cell stabilizer. It prevents the degranulation that triggers allergic response and histamine cascade. This is why Hildegard von Bingen prescribed hop shoots for spring ailments, what we now call seasonal allergies. The monks knew. But here is the deepest piece. In 2021, Dr. Cristina Airoldi at the University of Milan published a study analyzing the fiber content of hop shoots. She found that 37% of the dry weight is inulin, a prebiotic polysaccharide that human digestive enzymes cannot break down. Inulin passes intact into the colon, where it becomes food for Akkermansia mucinifera and Faecalibacterium prausnitzi, the two bacterial species most strongly correlated with metabolic health, lean body mass, and longevity. People with high levels of Akkermansia have lower rates of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and inflammatory bowel disease. Akkermansia is one of the first species to disappear when you eat a Western processed diet. Hop shoots restore it. This is not supplementation. This is ecological restoration of your microbiome. The Romans were eating this in 77 AD to purge black bile. We now know they were feeding the bacteria that regulate the gut-brain axis and modulate cortisol secretion. Pliny the Elder was documenting the psychobiotic effect of inulin 1,900 years before we sequenced the human microbiome. So why don't you see hop shoots in any grocery store in America? Because in 1975, the USDA classified hops as an industrial crop, not a food crop. This means hop farms are regulated under different standards. They can spray pesticides that are illegal for vegetables. They can use soil amendments that would disqualify produce from farmers' markets. Most commercial hop farms in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho use maleic hydrazide, a plant growth regulator that prevents lateral bud growth and maximizes flower production. Maleic hydrazide is banned for use on food crops in the European Union. It is a suspected carcinogen and reproductive toxin. You cannot eat shoots from a commercial hop yard. The shoots are poisoned, but here is what they do not tell you. Wild hops, Humulus, lupulus var, lupuloides, grow along every river corridor east of the Rockies. They are native to North America. They climb cottonwood trees, willow thickets, and chain-link fences from Montana to Maine. They have never been sprayed, never been treated, never been regulated. In 2018, researchers at the Czech Academy of Sciences analyzed hop shoots from wild populations across Europe. They found that wild hop shoots contained 3 to 4 times more xanthohumol than cultivated hop shoots. The commercial hop varieties, Cascade, Centennial, Chinook, Fuggle, have been bred for flower production and disease resistance. Nobody was breeding them for shoot quality. The wild plants, the plants growing along your river, are genetically closer to the hops that Pliny the Elder harvested in 77 AD. They have not been domesticated. They have not been weakened. They are stronger. This is the pattern you see everywhere in forgotten food. The wild version is superior. The industrial version is a ghost. Dandelion, purslane, lamb squatters, plantain, all of them were cultivated food crops. All of them were pushed out by industrial agriculture. All of them still grow wild. All of them are more nutritious than anything in a grocery store. Hop shoots are the aristocrat of this group. They are not just nutritious. They are medicinal at a level that threatens pharmaceutical revenue. An extract of xanthohumol sells for $400 per gram from chemical supply companies. You can harvest 2 to 8 grams of xanthohumol per kilogram of fresh hop shoots, if you know where to look. That is $800 to $3,200 worth of xanthohumol per kilogram from a weed. The hop plant is trying to give you something. It has been trying for 2,000 years. The Romans knew. The monasteries knew. The Belgians never forgot. We forgot. But the plant is still here. It is growing in every river valley from British Columbia to Nova Scotia, from Montana to Maryland. It is producing shoots for 47 days every spring. It is synthesizing xanthohumol, 8-prenylnaringenin, quercetin, camphorol, and inulin in concentrations that pharmaceutical companies would kill to patent. And it is free. Not because it is cheap, because it is wild, because it exists outside the system that profits from your ignorance. The system wants you to buy supplements. The system wants you to believe that health comes in bottles and pills and powders engineered in laboratories. The system wants you to forget that your ancestors ate medicine growing in ditches. Hop shoots are proof that the system is lying. If this opened a vault, subscribe. If you know someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. The wisdom is not lost.